The NFL trade deadline has come and gone. Which teams made out the best and which teams got left behind? Hey, everyone. Welcome to NFL This Week. Rob Wong, joined as always by Paul Chapman. And Paul, it was a busy deadline with a flurry of moves. There were even a ton of moves leading up to the deadline this year as well. With the dust having now settled, which teams do you look at as the ones that improved the most?
I find that this mindset is fascinating, Rob. Which teams were willing to give up on draft picks, which the NFL front offices just covet like gold, and say, you know what? No, we're going to make a move because we think we can make a difference. So I think probably the best player moved at the deadline was Marshawn Lattimore, and that's why the surprising early success of Jaden Daniels and the Washington Commanders. I mean, they probably paid the highest price of every team at the trade deadline, giving up to a third. I know there's a bunch of conditions in there, and Lattimore has had some health issues, but he is an elite player. He's made Pro Bowls. He's in his prime. It's not just for this year. This is a player that can be useful for them. They expanded high draft capital last year on a cornerback, Emmanuel Forbes, who just hasn't worked out. So you know what? They didn't sit there and cross their fingers and hope like a bunch of other teams. They're like, this team is ready to win now. We've seen teams that have squandered good young quarterbacks on that cheap rookie deal. And once you get in that second contract, it's so much more difficult. So I'm not suggesting the Commanders are going to win the Super Bowl, but that's a great move for them to go out and get a piece that solidifies their defense and someone who will be useful beyond this year. Also, maybe he's only useful for this year, but the Detroit Lions replacing Aiden Hutchinson, we knew they were in the market. Now, the Zadarius Smith may not be, a 25-year-old stud. Yes, he's older, but they didn't have to give up a lot to get him. He is proven. He's put up some stats this year, and yeah, he's playing against opposite of Myles Garrett, but that's a complete team defense in Detroit, and that's another team where they're looking at it like this is a need that's going to help us this year. And once we get in the playoffs, I think the Lions are really looking like they're going to be the number one seed all the way through, and will have home. So I love to see them swing for the fences as well. Also, if you go back a few days, DeAndre Hopkins. I mean, we saw what he did on Monday night. Look, what they gave up for him. The Chiefs, they're the two-time defending Super Bowl champions. They're the only undefeated team left in the NFL, and they may have had the most impactful move of the trade deadline without sacrificing a lot to get them. So those are the teams that stand out to me that I'm scratching my head looking at the rest of the NFL and going, why did you let them do this?
Yeah, a lot of great choices there, and a couple of teams that you talked about in Detroit and Kansas City that has Super Bowl aspirations, but a team like Washington who is trying to strike while the iron is hot with their 7-2 start to the season. So on the flip side, whether it's teams that missed out on adding or maybe teams that should have sold but did not, who are your losers at the deadline?
I think the top of mind for me is the New York Giants. We knew they were shopping the edge rusher Ojulari, and word just kept coming out over the last week that the price was too high. The price was too high. He's a free agent at the end of the season. They've invested in Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau. They are clearly not going to re-sign him. So why not get something for him? I know that they were hoping for a second or third round pick, but at that point, you get to the deadline. Why would you not add assets? Look, the Giants are going nowhere. They are terrible. You have a glut of players at that position. Why not get something for them? Anything. You never know what a fifth round pick can turn into in the NFL these days. The Jets are a little bit up and down because I think they overpaid for Devontae Adams. Again, you look at the price that other wide receivers went for. But they kind of recouped it a little bit by getting rid of Mike Williams. And I didn't mention the Steelers as a winner, but, they bolstered their defensive line and they add a receiver with Russell Wilson now looking better. And they're sitting pretty. They're leading that, they're up there with the Ravens and leading that division. They haven't played each other yet, those two teams. So the Steelers are going for it a little bit. Mike Williams, an interesting pickup. I think in fantasy waiver wires everywhere, he is going to be someone that people are going to look at now, considering he was, Rodgers didn't like him. Now he's got Russell Wilson, so we'll see how that works out. And of course, everyone is piling on the Cowboys, as they should. Let's just look at the list, right? It cost the Steelers a fifth-round pick for Mike Williams. It cost the Ravens a sixth-round pick for Deontay Johnson. DeAndre Hopkins, we already talked about, a fifth-round pick. Amari Cooper, a third-round pick and a seventh-round pick, and then, a third-round pick for Devontae Adams. And what did the Cowboys spend to get the great Jonathan Mingo? A fourth-round pick. So I look at what they did in Dallas. Look, He's the 121st ranked fantasy receiver, Jonathan Mingo. I don't think fans are going to, I just talked about Michael, I don't think people are going to be scrambling to get him. Now, okay, you can say he has not had the best quarterbacks playing with him in Carolina, but his yards after catch, I believe, are 72nd in the NFL. This is not a guy who you would pay that higher price for when you consider who else is available. Look, lots of criticism about the Cowboys having no running game and not going after Derrick Henry in the offseason. I look at now with Amari Cooper and DeAndre Hopkins for what their prices were to decide that Jonathan Mingo is your guy. I think the Cowboys are clear losers here as well.
Yeah, I saw a great tweet or post on X about how you couldn't even get that for Jonathan Mingo in fantasy football, let alone real football. So I think it just goes to show you how high of a price that they may have paid in that deal. But as always, leave your thoughts in the comments section below. For Paul Chapman, I'm Rob Wong. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you next week.